episode, we made our way through Turkey and into Iran and spent some time with Kurdish people in the hot western parts. Now it was time to escape to the cooler climate of Isfahan as we continue our journey through Iran and on to Pakistan. With its population of roughly 1 million, Isfahan is the third largest city in Iran and certainly the most attractive. Due to the fact that it was at one time the capital before Tehran, it boasts the highest concentration of Islamic architecture and is today regarded as the cultural center of Iran. Immediately after the Cultural Revolution in 1979, Iran declared an 8-year-long holy war on Iraq, which proved immensely costly. These large hand-painted banners proclaim eternal love and remembrance of men who died in that war perpetuated by the then religious leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. Before his death in 1989, strict Islamic laws and moral codes were entrenched by him. Iran is the country of the kebab and the koptuk, and any person visiting or living here will encounter both daily. For me to be able to stick my nose out of this hotel room, I've either got to wear the chador or I've got to wear this cursed koptuk, which will not only cover my hair, but will cover my neck completely. Taking its name from the fact that the other 20 columns are reflected in the huge pond, this palace called 40 Columns, now a museum, was once the venue of notoriously wild parties. Shamelessly adorned with unequaled treasures of its rich heritage, Isfahan is a city to walk, explore and get lost in. Shah Abbas I, called to the throne at the tender age of 16, was faced with a most unfavorable situation. He had to get rid of enemies, such as the Mughals and Ottomans, and unite his country. He did this and soon after set out to turn Isfahan into an imperial jewel by bringing in Armenian artisans and ploughing in large amounts of his own wealth. Soon the whole city was humming with the activity of commerce, arts and crafts. Isfahan has long been a strategic trading center in the south of Iran. Most of its beautiful and famous buildings were built by the Shah Abbas I, who reigned since 1587. This golden period in architecture lasted just over 100 years. Formerly a polo field of 8.1 hectares, this square, renamed after Imam Khomeini, is listed by the Guinness Book of Records as second only to Tiananmen Square in China. Lining it around the outside is 8 kilometers of covered bazaar, where an untold profusion of things are sold by wily merchants, who reportedly would not hesitate to paint a cucumber yellow and sell it as a banana. It is also possible for the extreme brave, who always have good medicine, to sample under these roofs some of the most scrumptious local cuisine.
It's a naughty man.
Often, kebab-wielding waiters operating in tea houses such as this one will admit without malice to tell you that they have abgust, a tasty dish of mashed together potatoes, lentils and meat, only eaten by locals on their menu, compelling you to come back a second time. If ever there had to be a contest for the country with the most prolific craftsmen, Iran would most probably win it hands down. The person who needs a pot, knife or pair of scissors, for example, would simply shoo down to his local blacksmith who would, with awesome speed and skill, beat it out of copper or metal right there and then. As copper can become toxic when used for cooking, this man applies a thin layer of tin to these pots before they are collected. By taking no precaution at all and inhaling these fumes all day long, he is risking his health through lack of knowledge in a system with few resources to protect him as a worker. Craftsmen normally get their skills very early in life from fathers and grandfathers who hand down their knowledge from one generation to the next in small family businesses. In this way, and perhaps because of the lack of opportunity to do anything else, these crafts and trades are perpetuated.
Look at this beautiful Qashqai carpet. It is a very nice Qashqai.
Near Shiraz.
Shiraz. The village, not Shiraz, the tribal, the people who live in tents. He wants to show you the finished kind of it. Because after painting 5 times, they put it in a steamer. So every design has got about 5 different blocks. The blocks are made by another person, carved by hand. So when they print on each other, they have to be careful. The man who makes the block and the man who prints the block on each other one by one after each other.
Exceeding our carrying capacity many times over, it was decided that this cloth, the exquisiteness and quality of which would make you weep, was sadly only to make it home with us as a photo. The Quran forbids the reproduction of human and animal forms in Islamic art, and this naturally influences the decoration of all objects as well. Highly complex interlacing patterns and shapes are repeated, creating dazzling focal points that constantly draw and coax the eye along when used on buildings of special importance. These central focal points in the design, like an optical vortex, constantly reaffirm Allah's greatness. Completed in 1638, after 26 years of construction, this mosque, covered with pale blue tiles that became synonymous with Isfahan, is one of the most imposing landmarks in Iran.
It's very good.
You guessed it, kebab time. This is what you get no matter what you seem to order. The key, as it turned out, to still enjoy them after so many days, is to see them not as kebabs but as something else. This technique of mind over kebab, to be patented by us soon, is vividly illustrated here while I'm convincing myself that these are in fact not kebabs but fresh Cape snoek cooked my favorite way. Not far from the small town of Bam, lies what should have been the eighth wonder of the world. More than any other place in Iran, it conveys the striking impression of a true living medieval city. This is the fortified city or citadel of Arghbam, situated in the eastern part of Iran. This citadel was constructed roughly 2,000 years ago in Sasanian times of mud, brick and straw. Like the first Arabs who arrived here in the 7th century, mud and straw is still used by the men employed in the never-ending process of restoration. Bam was known as a great textile center during the Middle Ages, attracting merchants and craftsmen from all parts of Iran. Described as impregnable in the 10th century, it contained a palace, 3 mosques, a bazaar and many fabulous mansions with vaulted roofs. Years later, cunning invaders diverted the course of the much-needed stream along one side of the fort and conquered it. Considering that it was built from mud, roughly 1,000 years ago, it has lasted amazingly well. Although large parts are still unrestored, the government is trying its best to bring it back to its former splendor, to be used as a cultural monument in an area with very few other attractions. And then disaster struck. Shell-shocked, dazed and blinded, we dropped our guard and left our video camera and money in a taxi in Zaidon. With nauseating disbelief, we realized where it was as the vehicle sped off. It was sitting in the back window of an orange Hillman, with number plates written in letters unreadable to Western eyes. With panic in its wide lens, it would have waved or thrown our wallet if it could. It turned out that there were more than 100 similar orange-painted taxis. Buying customary cake instead of beer, we set out to celebrate the work of a very enthusiastic police detective major who took pity on us. After a week of frustration, he finally understood that our only clue was a yellow screwdriver stuck into the back right door to keep the window up. With swift efficiency, he ordered his whole force to mount a day and night search and said our camera and money will come, inshallah. It did, and instead of terminating our journey, we continue further into Pakistan. On the Pakistani side of the border, the last prayer of the day is said as night falls, before we set off on the 600-kilometer overnight drive that lay ahead. We crawl into bed in Quetta at daybreak, dozing off with strange dreams from the lack of sleep and the hair-raising ride. Pakistan, meaning land of pure in Urdu, certainly is completely different to Iran in a wacky, playful kind of way. Where Iran was mostly somber and austere, Pakistan seems chaotic, colorful, fragrant and strange. Quetta, meaning fort, is the provincial capital of Balochistan. Due to an earthquake in 1935 that leveled every building and killed 35,000 people, it is a relatively new town with a pleasant rural flavor. Being one of many similar factories producing traditional shoes, this tiny operation is run by men who could only be brothers. They all share one similar attribute: double-jointed knees and ankles that turn their feet into an extra pair of hands. After watching them for a while, it occurs that these guys certainly have much-needed skills to teach to job-starved Africa. It is only possible to speculate what is to be learned from a band of grown-ups in one room, but what is certain is that although he is missing out on school, this young boy definitely will be able to fend for himself one day with his hard-earned skills. For the 140 million people of Pakistan, the refusal to lead bland grey lives without spice and colour is in part their saving grace. This constant craving for colour and texture seem to be the power behind the mechanism that allows money to pass hands. The need for things that are not always essential has seen to the proliferation of many kinds of businesses never possible in a drab society. A robust joy of life radiates from this ingrained cultural peculiarity applied to ordinary objects. With 77% of people being Sunni Muslim, this craving for colour hark back to a not too distant pagan past, where bright ornamental colour and the evil eye protected you from bad spirits. To include a race like this one of his 007 movies. I'm no James Bond, so I keep my head down and internalize my fear. Leaving Quetta would have been much worse if it hadn't been for the opportunity to ride in one of these fascinating sculpted chariots. It is time to move on to Peshawar, and it quickly becomes clear why hawkers were selling aspirin to passengers as the bus departs. As a frontier town situated 56 kilometers from the Afghanistan border, Peshawar guards the eastern end of the notorious and romantic Khyber Pass. With a name meaning City of Flowers, Peshawar would be more apt if it meant City of Thugs, said with a smile while you frown. The old town of Peshawar could easily be the setting of a Wild West movie in the costume of a Bible epic. A nasty twist is added when the special effects people leave the smoke machine on and go home. The combined impact on the senses of the extreme levels of sound and exhaust fume pollution is awesome. With high humidity added to all this, does it not then make sense to work outside on a balcony while drooling secretly over pamphlets of air conditioners? But if the baddies, pollution or stifling heat doesn't get you, the food certainly will. We ate here cheaply and paid dearly.
This one, she go to sell it to the people, this make money and for fire, wood, wood. For fire, because they have no Afghani camp people, from the camp. Okay. And no mother, no father, born, died from the camp.
After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, 3 million refugees settled in 350 enormous camps, mostly in the northwest frontier province. Today 1 million are still here in the camps, such as this one called Nasir Bagh. It is divided into distinct villages, complete with streets and mud dwellings, that started off as tents from aid agencies. As devout Muslims, the inhabitants quickly built outside walls to shield their women. By law, we had to be escorted by a policeman who told us in faltering English that this was done for our own safety due to large-scale gun running and drug trafficking in the area. With no one except women and children around, the place looks, although poor and unhygienic, rather peaceful. True to Muslim tradition, the women look after the kids at home while the men are out working.
گفتم که الان ما از کابل گرفتیم یه بچه خوب است.
Finding work is not easy for the Afghani refugees who live here, and only a handful end up working in weaving workshops, such as this one. Falling back on sometimes rusted skills after a long war, these men make the most exquisite carpets, and it's all done by hand. Strangely enough, this small workshop was set up by a Frenchman, Marc Roy, renamed Farouk after converting to Islam. Like now, he is often away in business due to high demand worldwide for whatever is produced here. After rigorous training as a carpet restorer in Afghanistan and working in Paris, Farouk quickly came to realize that the value and rarity of the antique carpets that has passed through his hands lay in the combination of traditional, natural colors and rich motifs. Approaching the task with reference material gathered from valuable collections of tribal rugs, with symbols and motifs rooted in ancient tradition, these men are reweaving, as it were, their own history. Making use of a fermentation process that can take up to 45 days, wool is dipped and left in a solution of madder to obtain red. No artificial color is used at all, as they believe that if done properly, natural dyes will last longer. Only good quality madder roots from the Punjab province, indigo from Madras, local sunflower and cochineal from Guatemala is used for dyeing the wool, producing colors that mellow with age. After 2 consecutive scrubbings with a steel broom and squeegee to fan out the bristles of the pile and bring out the color, this carpet is finally ready for shipment. After 18 years of prolonged fighting in Afghanistan, it is hardly surprising that some of this has rubbed off on local weaving. Although much cheaper and infinitely more commercial, these pieces are an indication of the psyche of a nation that had to lose all.
My name is Qudus. I am from Kabul, Afghanistan. I came 16 years ago because Russia came to Afghanistan and we came to Pakistan. And I make the shop around 13 years before. If Afghanistan safe, no fight and people work, they all go back to Afghanistan. And me also, if Afghanistan safe, we go back and we work in my country. Yeah.
Ominously, during the week we are in Peshawar, the news breaks that Kabul, the Afghani capital, has after fierce fighting fallen into the hands of the Taliban, a fundamentalist Muslim group of young religious leaders. In a region that has been through constant turmoil for more than 2,000 years, a curious fascination with violence, blood and guns are evident everywhere. In movies where a gunshot is as good as a stab to a dead man, women are exploited and blood is okay.
If they give you something as a present or gift, don't refuse them.
Apparently the deal here is that loads of hashish are brought into Peshawar from Afghanistan by traders who buy guns on their way back. Simple but dangerous. Here anyone can buy a gun without a license. Other shop owners get mildly irritated when we want to film a prospective buyer who, as is the custom here, tries out an AK-47 in the busy street. Still reeling from shock of the madness we witnessed, and with mouths as dry as Baluchi blankets, we head back to our hotel with our minds in top gear, making plans to shake up our dubious friend who insists on accompanying us everywhere. The next day we find this place, off one of the busy main streets behind the bazaar of Old Town Peshawar. Being virtually the opposite side of the coin, these men, like the ones weaving gorgeous carpets, are manufacturing guns with primitive tools by hand. Skillfully fashioning lumpy chunks of metal into sleek pistols, with no more than files, hand drills and saws, these men get the equivalent of 400 rand per pistol.
No, they stop. He say, I'm empty, no more bullets. Automatically they stop. Yes.
With contradictory innocence, they seem more like young boys showing off a new toy. But they are not the only ones. Strewn around town are many similar factories varying in size and caliber, you might say. This man can make you an AK-47 that will comfortably pass as the real thing. Although it might explode in your face, the price you'll get it for will more than make up. In recent months, the government has made an attempt to close down operations such as these, but with limited success. According to Khalid, our adopted uncle and guide, it is quite easy to get a license for an automatic assault rifle in Pakistan. And once you have it, you have a business. If you can make a gun, copying a number is nothing.
Now he's smoking hashish, the guy is stoned. Okay. Oh, Chinese. Chinese. Oh, Italy wala. Italy wala. That 10 bullets. 10 bullets. Ah, that comes in copy that. China. Oh, well, theory kana. So they make a different. The 14 there. But not 14 bullets. قلت لك بيها وقت السلنسر شيء كنا سلنسر ما تقولي سلنسر system كنا سلنسر they put silencer here no nosing just do shoot like this no more reggae They make a hole in a barrel, which is the bullet goes so fast, you know, being like this, you know. Yes, you see, very easy. They have good spring and very good work. This, yes. Sometimes they make nobody see, and this is the original one, and this is the copy. And you can see the difference between this and the original one. They're made by hand, just hand work. There's no machine, nothing.
truck's appearance is merely done as a statement of individuality on the part of the owners. Far from being only stunning works of art, these trucks are also made to work hard, carrying anything from apples to rocks. The Bedford, for a long time now, no more in production, seems to be the favorite choice because of its shapely lines and more elegant nose. As unbelievable as it might seem, this is not a tractor for display but a machine that is earning its keep. It just so happens that the owner prefers it decorated this way and might feel exposed without it when plowing. For the Pakistani truck owner in need of customization, a bounty awaits him. And if you're one of the lucky ones with a Bedford, you can have this adorable gadget fitted to your hood. Depending on the thickness of your wallet, you can get things like handsome hand-beaten corner pieces and metal brocade, or fancy electronics. Shops specializing in vehicle ornamentation have evolved over the years into lucrative concerns, eager to whip you up a shiny creation. Broken down into its basic components, the staple diet of this craft is reflectors, paint and polished metal. Geared to handle bumper-to-bumper customization, new trucks are rolled into this yard to be chopped up and prepared for the Pakistani conversion. Fulfilling many functions, the main aim of all this is to attract good karma while traveling to avoid accidents and possible death on dangerous roads. Large amounts of money are spent on these changes with no return because it will not necessarily bring in any extra work. Lavishing the equivalent of $4,000 on work to his truck, this man is satisfied that he did well. Taking a welcome break from pollution and overcrowding, we head north into the cool, fresh air of the Hindu Kush mountains. After reporting to the local police and getting permits to travel into the valleys, we set off from Chitral village, perked up in anticipation of a new adventure. Our goal is to reach a distant system of valleys where a unique culture exists, on the verge of extinction. With a loose promise from a man we don't know, who said he'll be back after a few days to fetch us, we finally arrive after a bumpy 2-hour drive at a place that looks like a well-kept park with a picture book display of rural life. This is the Bumbaret Valley in the Hindu Kush Mountains in northern Pakistan, close to the Afghanistan border. Here and in 2 other valleys, the Berir and the Rambur, lives a fragile group of no more than 3,000 people called the Kafir Kalash. According to them, they are direct descendants of Alexander the Great, who 300 years before Christ swept through these areas. On seeing the beauty of the land with its numerous fertile valleys, many warriors decided to give up war and to settle here. Land of the Unbelievers, or Kafiristan, once a small province in northern Afghanistan, had these 3 valleys in Pakistan along its eastern border. During the 1890s, Afghani Muslim leaders, abhorred by the Kalash's use of alcohol and the wooden statues of their gods, systematically set about to convert them, sometimes at sword point, and renamed the area Nuristan, or Land of Light. With all this taking place in Afghanistan, only the few living in the three valleys of Bumburet, Birir and Rambur were able to maintain their beliefs. As non-Muslims, they don't believe in purdah or sex segregation, and boys and girls like these are allowed to mix and associate freely. Although arranged marriages do occur, it is not out of the ordinary for youngsters to pick their own partners. Due to the small number of Kalash in all three valleys, strict rules are enforced that prohibit incest, and marrying someone from other valleys are promoted. Because most of these places are so inaccessible and have only one treacherous road, often closed in winter, they only grow what they need among themselves, favoring foodstuffs that don't spoil easily and can be harvested and dried for later use. Harnessing the kinetic power generated by an abundance of year-round strong running water, fabulous low-tech machines like these are communally shared. Painstakingly slow, maize is fed under its grinding wheel, adding an important ingredient, stone, proven essential to the human diet. Kalash folk tales tell of a mythical land called Siam. Where that is, no one knows. The reason for this is that detail have been lost in its verbal form because they have never developed a written language of their own. Only recently, with the help of Australian language experts, have attempts been made to create an alphabet for them. It is only lately that the Pakistani government, who in the past have turned a blind eye to their needs, are accepting their responsibility to protect them from outside interference. According to Mr. Jenner, a local farmer and hotel owner, financial incentives through Muslim aid organizations and the lure of proper Islamic education for their children are used as bait to get them to convert. For him, being Kalash means to worship the Zao, the creator god, along with various other gods in charge of livestock, crops, fruits and family life. To give that up is akin to committing suicide. Willing to adapt, the Kalashas realized that in order to survive they must hold on to their culture by teaching it to their kids. They have also learned that in giving up some customs, like this one of leaving their dead in coffins above ground at the edge of settlements, is more appropriate for gaining support on the arduous way ahead. As promised, our driver arrived on time to take us on a 2-day journey by jeep to the town of Gilgit, roughly 400 kilometers away. In anticipation of more remote stretches ahead, we grab a late breakfast of sweet milky tea and fresh bread. Covered in a fine layer of dust and with teeth feeling as if they had been rattled loose, we stop at the top of Shandur Pass. Vast, empty and excruciatingly beautiful, this place makes far-sounding places like Timbuktu seem like an overcrowded shopping mall just around the corner. As the day comes to a close and the chilly mountain air starts to creep in, we hurriedly have our meal and dive into a warm, snug bed, appreciating the quietness of the valley after the chaotic drive. The next morning, our driver informs us of a swap he had made the previous evening with a friend who would take us to Gilgit in time for our plane to Lahore. After initial apprehension to travel with a new driver, we tackle a bumpy second leg, said to bring on instant religion. Its narrow, treacherous path, meandering along sheer cliffs, hundreds of meters high above the Gilgit River, instills sustained and immediate God-fearing panic into any cold heart, but not without divine reward. As each bend unfolds, beauty overshadows itself repeatedly. We certainly don't relish the thought of heading back into the chaos of big cities just yet. But time is ticking by and we have to move on. Lahore has been the capital of the Punjab province for over 1,000 years. It is said by many that Lahore is Pakistan's most interesting city with its mixture of British and Islamic architecture. It is in fact an accumulation of all those who have conquered it. But Shahi Mosque, built in the 1700s and capable of holding over 100,000 people, is one of the grandest and largest in the world. With nighttime turning pollution into a romantic fog, there is hardly a break in the frenetic scuttling about of people in the streets. Vendors of all descriptions, seemingly rotating in shifts, work the crowds who pass them in endless droves. Although a very charming place, Lahore is hard to handle if you grew up with cool, fresh air blowing in your face. Karachi, a port city on the Arabian Sea, is the economic powerhouse of Pakistan. It is also the largest city, with a population of more than 10 million. Here and in the surrounding area of the Sindh, cultural life revolves around the shrines of Sufi saints, who are responsible for the best of Sindhi poetry, recited and sung throughout Pakistan. People often visit these shrines, hoping that the saints will mediate with God on their behalf in the granting of some favor, be it fertility, success, or health. Karachi, ballooning from a quiet fishing village a century ago into a mega city, has brought with its rapid expansion problems such as a shortage of housing and water. In a bid to overcome this, trucks are used to transport water to households around the city. 50 years after its dramatic birth in 1947, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is a new nation in a very old land. We often bundle countries together along geographical lines, as Middle Eastern or Asian, but only after coming here do you realize that each one has its own distinct independent character. Traveling is a valuable experience far beyond just seeing architectural wonders, art collections and breathtaking scenery. To major in exploration at the World University of Travel might demand high fees for enrollment, but is certainly rewarding.